Because a lot of us, we might know what our values are, but if I were to ask all of us sitting here, what are your top 5 values? We might not be able to spout them off, but we know what it looks like to live in alignment with them. And when we're not in alignment with them, that feels odd or sort of out of balance or not congruent, right? And so I think what you mentioned is really key, is taking that time to self-reflect, whether it's while you're running or walking and listening to a podcast. For some others, that might be, sitting down with a journal. I'm glad you're taking advantage of coaching, because it unlocks that accountability partner to hold yourself accountable for what does it look like when you are doing your best work.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Business Beyond Usual. My name is John Brown, and I'm here with my co-host, Victoria Rudnicki, and we're recording live from the Ross School of Business once again. I'm here with Senior Leadership's Manager Director, Jeff Damagela, and MBA Council President, Denny Lai. Today, we will discuss how Ross MBA builds leaders. On to you, Victoria.
Before we get started, we want to encourage you to get in touch. We always love engaging with our listeners, and we would love to hear from you. Send us a message at bbupodcast@umich.edu. That's bbupodcast@umich.edu. You can follow us on Instagram at Ross_BBU. Again, that's Ross_BBU. And definitely feel free to DM us on Instagram as well. Ask us questions, suggest episode topics, or just say hello.
All right, before we go into introductions, we're just going to do a real quick icebreaker to get everyone comfortable. So here's a question for everyone. How would you describe what is not leadership in one word? Jeff, as the resident expert at the table, I'll start with you.
All right, sounds good. The word I would use would be selfish.
Awesome. Denny, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I would say the word would be control.
Yeah, I really agree with both of you. I would say a title. I have a sticker on my water bottle from the Sanger Leadership Center that says leadership is so much more than a title, and I could not agree more.
Yeah, I think you all hit very critical words about what leadership is not. Definitely, it is not about you. When we're talking leadership, it is not about you. You're looking out for the benefit of your team. You're looking out for the benefit of your organization. So it does require a very selfless mentality when you're looking at that. All right, so we're going to go into introductions. So we'll start with pre-Ross background, involvement at Ross, and then post-Ross goals. So I guess I'll kick us off. My name is John Brown. I'm an MBA 2. Pre-Ross, I did some cool stuff at the Pentagon with the Marine Corps. If you've listened to the podcast, you've heard me talk about it enough. At Ross, I've served in a couple leadership positions. I am the Section 3 president, do it for the fam, and I am also an executive producer for the podcast. I recruited for brand management roles, intern at the Clarks Company over the summer. I'm currently recruiting for brand management roles and looking forward to the opportunity to influence that space post-graduation. All right, we're going to you, Victoria.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Victoria. I'm an MBA 1 here at Ross, so really just starting my journey. Prior to arriving here in Ann Arbor, I spent about 5 years in finance in New York City. And really my thesis for coming to Ross was to make a pivot into consulting because I love to see the big picture and solve problems for businesses, but also to add in a global scope to my career. I love foreign languages and traveling, and so I've always dreamed of working abroad and working with international companies. So here at Ross, I'm recruiting for consulting, hoping to find a role with a global scope. But I'm also involved in the bus, which, if you guys don't know about that, is our awesome tailgate here at Ross, and also the International Investment Fund and Maize and Brew, which is our beer lovers club.
Awesome. And then we're moving to you, Denny.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, John, and just the team for having me on here. I've been listening to the BBU podcast for a couple of years now, even before I was a student, so it's surreal to be here on the other side. My name, once again, Denny Lai, MBA 2, originally from Southern California. Prior to Ross, I spent a number of years working in economic consulting in the San Francisco Bay Area. And kind of on the converse to Victoria, I'd been in consulting for a number of years. I really enjoyed a lot of my client engagements with my life sciences clients. And I wanted to, really dive deeper into the life sciences. So I came to Ross wanting to pivot into healthcare, into the industry specifically in biotech and biopharmaceuticals, and have been able to do that over the last year. Was part of the Healthcare Life Sciences Club, was a huge participant in just all things life sciences and healthcare here at Ross. This past summer, I interned at Bristol Myers Squibb out in Princeton, New Jersey, as a commercial development intern, and we'll be going back after graduation. So, really excited that Ross has really helped me facilitate that transition in my career. Here at Ross, I'm involved in a number of different things. So beyond being MBA Council President this year, I'm also proudly a member of Section 5 and the Section President for Section 5. So quick shout out there. But also part of the Zell Lurie Commercialization Fund. So it's one of the student venture capital funds here on campus with a specific focus on early stage, seed stage and pre-seed startups out here in southeastern Michigan. And so it's been an amazing experience really working with entrepreneurs, seeing that glisten in their eye as they really just kind of pour out their venture with us. And we get to partner along and see them in their journey there. Also, have been a part of just impact here on campus as well. Last year, I was part of the Detroit initiative and just really giving back to the Detroit metropolitan area in underserved communities, being able to provide them with some pro bono consulting. So it's been quite the journey here at Ross. I've loved every moment of it, but I'm going to kick it over here to Jeff.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about my journey as managing director, but I'd say it actually, so Jeff Tamagela served as managing director of the Sanger Leadership Center. I'd actually say my journey started as a club leader myself, as an undergraduate and graduate student. I was heavily involved and held a lot of leadership positions. And I know you had said, leadership isn't about position, it's much more than that. But that's actually where I really understood what really mattered to college students as they develop through their time in institutions in higher education. So I went and attended Grand Valley State University as a graduate studying college student affairs leadership and had a strong passion for developing people. And what I was looking for was really helping people become the best version of themselves, which led me to the field of leadership development. I led various leadership programs while I was at Grand Valley State before I moved on to New York and directed leadership programs there at Pace University, where I led the operations of living learning communities, leadership conferences, and a variety of multi-tier leadership programs. While I was there, I really enjoyed my experience at Pace, but I was looking for collaboration with a variety of stakeholders to be closer to the research that I was actually leveraging and wanted to move closer back home to Michigan. I came across the Sanger Leadership Center through a mutual connection in the field and got to come back home and took on a role as associate director of leadership programs when I started at Sanger. When I first started, I built a lot of solid foundations with our current students, helping people understand who they were at their core, their values and their purpose. It was a colleague who said to me, "Jeff, you'd be a perfect leadership coach." And I was like, "Wow, tell me more." And so I went up and went through about 100 hours of training through the Coactive Training Institute, logged about 150 hours of coaching hours, took an oral exam, and now I'm a certified coach. And so I currently co-teach our MO 625 class here for MBA 2's Leadership Coaching Practicum for full-time MBA students who serve as peer coaches to MBA 1s going through MAP. I became managing director back in 2020, led the team through the pandemic, and now really charting a course for our whole team that we're pretty excited about. Thanks,
Jeff. Glad to hear that we have another ex-New Yorker in the room. It's always good to be to be with people like me. So follow-up question for you. You mentioned your role as part of Sanger, but for those of us listening who don't necessarily know what Sanger is, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is, how it got started, how it fits within the Ross curriculum, and what are some of the initiatives that you can get involved with Sanger here at Ross?
Great question. So Sanger Leadership Center is the center of excellence and the hub for leadership programming and research here at the Ross School of Business. We serve all students at the university. Our mission, what we get really excited about, is we accelerate leader development through bold ideas, transformative experiences, and inclusive community. So our history actually dates back to about 2006, where Sue Ashford, who's a current Ross faculty member here, founded the Ross Leadership Initiative, where Crisis Challenge was formed, which would actually establish the blueprint for leadership programming that has followed ever since, really on a couple prongs. One, it's experiential. Two, it's designed to meet the demands of today's world of work. And three, it's informed by practice-oriented research. In 2015, Michigan Ross alum Steve Sanger made a $20 million gift and invested to establish the Sanger Leadership Center, which actually continued the legacy of his leadership, which Steve devoted his entire career to as a CEO of General Mills. Since then, we have a team that's comprised of full-time staff who design, facilitate, evaluate our programs. We also have a research lab that's led by our faculty director, Lindy Greer, and that's really launched to accelerate the creation and the dissemination of cutting-edge leadership research to share and receive feedback on early-stage ideas when it comes to research. So since its inception, we're thinking about ideas around paths to leadership, leader communication, how leaders navigate emotions, how to lead diverse, equitable, and inclusive teams. So when we think about what we're made of, research is really important. Our frameworks, we have a lot of frameworks that people know, the Michigan model of leadership, the Sanger leadership journey. In a nutshell, if you're not familiar, what that is, the Michigan model of leadership is really about balancing tensions found in all teams, in all organizations. So that's collaboration and driving results, right? If we're always collaborating, how might we drive results? But if we're pushing too heavy in results, how might we bring people along? And then the other tension is that urgency and stability. We have to have that structure. But if we have too much structure, we can't innovate. But if we're always innovating, how do we sort of think about what's going to keep us moving as an organization? And so the journey framework that we've also developed is a 5-step self-coaching model to help learners really essentially run behavioral experiments based on where they need to grow, areas that they need to grow in. So we've got a variety of programs from there that help a student learn and develop throughout their journey. So whether students want to go deep and participate in more reflective-based experiences, such as our Legacy Lab program or our Ross Leaders Academy, understanding concepts like purpose and values and how do they unlock their personal capabilities, or maybe they want to get a bit more action-based and participate in our Story Lab program, which is about unlocking your capability as a leader in terms of influencing with authority and communicating with impact. Or maybe they're interested in crisis challenge, taking on that role of a C-suite level individual and presenting a strategy to a board of directors. So regardless of what a student is interested in, there's a variety of ways to participate. And what we're really excited about in the past 2 years, we developed the Michigan Ross Leader Endorsement, which is an endorsement for students who want a credential when they leave Michigan Ross on behalf of what it is that they gained as a result of being a leader. And by participating in so many flagship experiences, reflecting on action-based learning, students have the opportunity to receive that credential.
I love that you talked a lot about leadership as a journey. I started the podcast up top by saying it's not a title. I would say it is a journey in my mind. That's how I think about it. And I think Sanger has been really instrumental in helping me have that growth mindset. So excited to talk more about that as the episode goes on.
All right, Danny, we're going to move on to you just to get a little bit of background to the MBA Council. So what exactly is the MBA Council and how does it work?
Yeah, no, happy to talk about the MBA Council as always. So we're the student governing body here for the MBAs, full-time MBAs here at Ross. We are 7 individuals that play, kind of different roles here within the student governing body. So we have our VP of DEI, Sean Michael Steele. I definitely want to give a shout out to, each of my amazing team members here on the council. We have Alexis Cooper as our executive vice president. We have Sia Karki as our VP of International Student Experience. We have Livia Lucena, who's our VP of Wellness. We have our VP of Finance, Nikki Patil. And we also have our VP of Clubs, Aga Okoye. So, there's 7 very amazing individuals. They kind of pour their hearts out into each of their respective verticals. And myself, as the president of the MBA Council, kind of utilizes this governing body to be able to impact student programming, student events, such as our International Student Week that we just had this past week, our Diversity Week, as well as our Wellness Week. So we are truly a liaison for our student body with the administration, with the Career Development Office, as well as just the larger university system. I think one of the things that's really unique about the MBA Council is that we work with so many different clubs and so many different student leaders, and they're the ones that truly motivate us each and every day to bring our best selves to showing and exuding leadership from the point and the position of service. I mean, that's kind of how it works, but we'll definitely talk a little bit more about it as the podcast goes on.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find just very important about NBA councils. Not only do you serve as a liaison between the clubs and the students, but you also serve as that liaison between the administration as well. You've gotten to sit in with meetings with Dean Matusik and other members of the administration. So you get to make sure that our voices are heard when we're looking at Ross writ large. Yes. So a follow-up question for you, Denny. What leadership roles did you have prior to Ross? And then why did you want to be involved in NBA Council? And how do you see this role as influencing future leadership roles for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's a great question. So prior to Ross, I would say my leadership involvement would go in three buckets. So as I mentioned kind of earlier in the podcast, as an ex-consultant, I led a team of typically 5 to 7 individuals as we were, working with clients, working with different stakeholders. I think a lot of leadership there, what it really taught me was project management and also people management, right? So like I said at the beginning, leadership is not about control. It's about empowering the individuals around you to bring their best work and their best selves each and every day to what they do and for them to love what they do. And I think in my first bucket as an ex-consultant, as a leader within the workspace, that has given me a lot of skills to do that from a technical perspective as well. Second bucket was, so during my time in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was part of a nonprofit organization that worked with food deserts as well as communities that might not have as much accessibility to health and wellness resources as well in San Francisco. And in that opportunity, it truly taught me the importance of being a leader from the perspective of the humanity of it, right? Like truly being passionate about what you do and leading with your heart on your sleeve and truly just really embodying what it means to serve the community, not from a perspective as a consultant where, you're telling someone this is what you should do, but this is how we can listen to you first before we take action. I think the third bucket here for me is just kind of leadership in the context of just even for fun activities, right? So I'm a huge basketball guy. I played a lot of kind of team sports and rec sports when I was in the Bay Area. And truly, it's just about like in this third bucket of leadership, I would say it's how do you bring fun to the environment and how do you kind of be adaptable and flexible and how do you, just kind of create an environment and cultivate an experience where other people are truly able to be present in the moment, but also have some fun as well in teams, right? We're all endeavoring towards the same end result, but how we get there, and to Victoria's point, that journey, as a leader, you cultivate that as well.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a spontaneous question out there. I'll open up for the floor, but Jeff, I definitely would like you to kick us off. So a lot of times there's management and leadership. And a lot of times you hear the saying, you manage resources and you lead teams and organizations. Jeff, what is the difference between management and leadership?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Oftentimes when I think about it, management and leadership is back to what you were saying about the title and the role, right? Is oftentimes as a manager, you have a title, right? And sometimes you can be a leader as a manager, but I believe that some managers are not leaders. And I think leadership is a choice. And the difference between how I think about management and leadership is that I know we're going to talk about what is leadership and really what it means, but I think it's moving people to action. And in order to do that, I think you have to motivate, you have to inspire, you have to get to know people. And to be able to do that, you've got to really unleash what it means to build trust and psychological safety in environments. People aren't going to just follow you or listen to your command. They might get work done, but you might not be creating an engaged, positive workforce that's going to continue to get to those results each and every time, or a team that's committed to staying. So I think we have to think a lot about our people as we drive results, and I think leaders do that. I think managers oftentimes think about just the result, and they oftentimes forget about the people, because you can do a lot with people once you understand them and see where they bring out their best skill set and where they can do their best work, and find people that allow that team coming together as a team. I think when you enable teamwork, you advance leadership. And when you just drive results, you oftentimes think about just management.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you have to say there. I think management is the title and leadership is what you two started the podcast with, about being selfless and empowering of your teammates. I think that's been the biggest unlock for me. I remember in college, I played lacrosse in college, and we did this exercise where we talked about people's leadership styles and what people responded to. And I think for the longest time, I had a hard time separating, this is my leadership style. I'm loud, I'm in your face, I'm pumping you up, but not everyone responds to that. And I thought that it was being inauthentic to myself to modify my leadership style to suit the needs of my teammates. But I think since then, reflecting on that experience back in college and going through a lot of the Sanger programming, it's really helped me understand that being a leader is not necessarily about being true to yourself in the moment. It's about being true to what the team needs in that moment. And so for me, I think leadership is just all about recognizing what other people need, being empathetic, and really, like Denny said, empowering people to bring out their best. There's no better feeling in the world than helping other people unlock their best work.
Yeah, and I think you both made some great points. And one of the things I always tell my Marines is that leadership is rank or position agnostic. You can be the youngest person on the team and be able to influence and motivate people. And not only that, but it's something you have to think about too is, do you have the ability to motivate and lead 360 degrees? Can you lead up? Can you lead down? And can you lead across with your peers? So definitely leadership, like you said, Jeff, it's a choice and it's the ability to move people. But one of the things that I really think is a great takeaway is that it doesn't matter where you are in your career. Do you have opportunities to take up leadership mantles?
This episode is sponsored by the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Through our podcast, you can connect with the people and experiences that define the Ross way. Check out our other podcasts, such as Working for the Weekend, an exploration of the part-time MBA experience, Business and Society, a business podcast with award-winning Michigan Ross faculty, and coming soon, Down to Business, a new interview series with Ross alum in the C-suite, hosted by Dean Sharon Matusik. All podcasts can be found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Jeff or Denny, I'll throw it up to either of you to kick us off here. What makes a great leader today? The past 3 years have seen an incredible amount of change going through COVID, switching to hybrid and remote work environments. Even just in the past year, we've seen the genesis of generative AI really popping up in the workplace. What do you think are some of the skills that leaders need to be especially equipped with today to manage in this contemporary environment?
Yeah, I could take a stab at that. I would say two things in 2023 as we look ahead at 2024 and beyond. Two words that I would describe as being central to leadership are empathy and versatility. So empathy, I think especially as a lot of work has gone, remote or hybrid, or just people's lives have become a bigger part, either in the context of school or in the workplace, have become more prominent and a part of, who we are as human beings and just really recognizing the humanity there. I think empathy goes a long way in recognizing and empowering people, not only within the context of their work, but also, just in their own personal lives and their development and journey here, right? So I would say empathy, listening first before you speak, inquiring and gathering data from teammates that you entrust and have confidence in before you make a decision. Those are all central tenets of what I would think a great leader would be. And then, the versatility there is just recognizing that if you're the leader of a team, you have other teammates, right? Like, what is the purpose of being a leader of people if you don't trust the people that are there in the positions that they are with the expertise that they have? So I would say recognizing that in swift changing times, Victoria, like what you said, the last couple of years has been quite a whirlwind. Being flexible and recognizing where you can flex the strengths of your team and showcase their talents, that's what truly makes a great leader. And we'll need it more now than ever as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are changing so fast, and it's so vital that leaders continue to view their leadership as a journey and be able to be versatile in their leadership style. Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with what you said, Denny. And I think, I said it before, but that, we think about the definition of leadership, and there's a lot of definitions out there, which makes leadership that more complex. But the definition we use at Sanger is often the ability to influence and inspire others towards goal achievement, whatever that is. But to be able to do that, I think today, what differentiates good leadership from great leadership is that ability to listen, right? We failed to do that in so many ways in the past couple of years. And we often actually are striving away from tough conversations. And instead of saying, I'm right, you're wrong, say, what could I gain from a different perspective? How might I learn? How might I grow? Back to your point around the journey, right? We have to have those tough conversations in order to influence and inspire, because we have to know what people think. And we have to know how they're thinking in order to inspire them. And so in order to do that best work, we've got to know, in the minds and in the hearts of people, how they want to be led. I think organizationally, looking for ways to create value and stay relevant is going to stay really important. You mentioned AI and the ability to find ways to bring about innovation. That's not the way that someone else is already doing it. We think about it at the Sanger Leadership Center all the time about how is our program, 5%, 10% more different than it was last year, to continue to be the place where innovation is happening and that transformation is happening. But also, what we found is really difficult for some of our students and learners is when ambiguity shows up at our doorsteps, we don't know what to do. And so finding that, using your team, using people around you, having thought partners to say, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I think AI can be helpful and can give you that sort of that next step. But how do you sort of get to that really bold idea at the rate of change is happening at a just more exponential rate? How do we take the time to reflect when change is happening and then bring people together to create long-term change? So I'd agree with your listening comment, but also the change comment. And that's our ability to scan the environment, look at what's coming, and then also say, how might we bring together resources and say, how might we create something new or different?
Yeah, I mean, even in the team dynamic aspect, as I mentioned earlier before the break, I'm a huge basketball nerd. And what I usually like to describe as my leadership style is positionless basketball, right? So you see it throughout, sports, you see it in all different high performing teams. It's that ability to, check your ego at the door and truly recognize that in a team, everyone brings something very unique from the vantage point that they're coming from. So, in terms of the basketball metaphor, I'm a diehard Lakers fan, but, the Golden State Warriors play a beautiful brand of basketball. And it's because every single night, someone could be the star on their team. And, you even see it even just with the Department of Health through the federal government, even just with the rollout of COVID vaccines over the last couple of years and the lessons that we've learned there, which is the best teams are ones where everyone can bring out their best strengths and skills and everyone has a moment to shine. You have a leader who has an overarching vision and, tries to keep people kind of within the parameters of that. But at the end of the day, you need to let people kind of loose in that perspective and do their best work that way.
Yeah, I love that example. And I love the basketball example because there's a research around claiming and granting leadership, right? So might not be positional, but it might say, I'm looking for that moment that's mine, right? And that moment that's mine might be, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to listen and I'm going to let other people lead. And then it might be my opportunity to say, I'm going to take the lead and I'm going to influence. So looking for those moments, not every moment is always your moment. And you have to know that, and you have to know when it is your moment and when it's not. And you might fail and you might experiment, but that's what leadership is about, is that journey of self-understanding and discovery to know what your leadership style is when do you feel like you have it inside of you to take the lead, take the moment? And that might be saying something in a meeting or a boardroom, or it might be actual taking action if it's sports or working hands-on on something experiential.
I love everything that everyone's saying. And one of the key takeaways that I think we've all alluded to when we're talking leadership is also accountability. You have to be able to hold yourself accountable as well as your team. And like Jeff was saying, it's like when you do hit those failures, what are you learning? How are you going to take those failures to learn and grow from those? But I think too often when we think accountability, we think about what our teams are doing wrong or what we're doing wrong and not what our teams or we're doing right. Accountability is just as much about what we're doing right as what we're doing wrong. Like you mentioned, Denny, with the Golden State Warriors, everyone has an opportunity to be the superstar. So that means even if you're not the Steph Curry, you have an opportunity to hit that game-winning basket. And that's the thing. It's like not everyone can be a superstar. But what are you doing to incentivize your day-to-day average workers? And in today's world where People are more focused in on their mental health. They're more willing to switch careers for their mental health, considering folks are not going to be working careers 40, 50 years like our parents did. People are going to be looking for those opportunities. So what are we doing to talent management? What are we doing to retain that talent? Those folks who are game changers and have the potential to lead at higher levels within our organizations. Jeff, we're going to kick it back to you. You mentioned Crisis Challenge and Story Lab, which are some of the ways in which Sanger influences the MBA class. So at the strategic level, what role does Sanger play in the MBA program in shaping future leaders here at Ross?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we're reimagining for, incoming students and, our current students is, when students come in orientation programming, they get some leadership programming. And then when they're a part of the MAP experience, they get leadership programming there. What we're doing is we're actually being a lot more strategic about that bookend experience in your first year as an MBA. And we're calling that Collaboration Lab. So full-time MBA Collaboration Lab, we're calling it's a branded bookend experience for all Ross MBA 1 students that provides leadership development training focused on team collaboration skills at the start of orientation. So we call that launch. And at the end of their first year during MAP, we call that accelerate. So what that looks like is sessions in this program integrate action-based learning from orientation to MAP with a lot of the evidence-based tools and frameworks to help students really design and think about what does it look like to be in a high-performing team. So it's powered by us at the Sanger Leadership Center. It's in partnership with the Office of Action-Based Learning. But we essentially call this Level 1 Required Leadership. From there, students can opt into any programs, based on their interest, their skill set, their need. And if they're interested in receiving that credential, they can participate in that Michigan Ross Leader endorsement. But what we really want to make sure is that all of our students graduating from Michigan Ross, whether they participate in Sanger Leadership Programming or just participate in the required leadership programming, we want them to gain 3 things: self-awareness, leading others, and leading teams. And so when we say self-awareness, that might mean of their leadership skills, how to learn to create that intentional journey, what are the resources that give students that confidence to guide them on that journey. And it could be their purpose, their values to unlock that capability. Leading others, the second tier really is how do they gain access to the interpersonal skills, including communication, influence, emotional intelligence, reading a room, how to navigate conflict, right? And then leading teams. How do they learn how to lead teams and organizations, building on a lot of the collaborative culture, driving results, structuring those processes, and developing those team flexibility and innovation. You can see what I did there if you're following along on the Michigan model of leadership, is those each of those 4 dimensions, right? Because as we graduate leaders, they've got to be able to deal with the challenges that come across from a people perspective, from a process perspective, from a results perspective, but also how do we change the world of work when it comes to innovation? So along that journey, we support them through coaching in a variety of ways. That might be through executive coaches that we bring in and contract to deliver one-on-one coaching to students, or that might be their peer coaches that they have access to throughout MAP and a variety of experiences while they're here at Michigan Ross.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for talking through all of that. I think for me, coming into Ross, leadership capabilities was such a huge part of my decision factor in choosing an MBA program, and it's been awesome to be involved in the Sanger Leadership Center. I'm actually starting the Ross Leader endorsement this year, so I've participated in a handful of the programs that Jeff has mentioned. I think what's really nice about the Leader endorsement is that it's self-paced, and these programs are offered at different times throughout the year. And even with the craziness of consulting recruiting this fall, I've still been able to slot in some activities to keep working on my leadership journey. I think for me, I've kind of gotten to the point where self-awareness is coming a little bit more easily, and I'm really excited to dive into the leading others and leading teams aspect of Sanger's mission. My favorite thing this fall so far has been participating in Legacy Lab, where I really got to connect with my values and my purpose. And so much of that really came back to connecting with others and empowering others. And I'm so excited to keep learning how to do that here at Michigan Ross. I'm excited for Crisis Challenge coming up in January. I know the registration opens up really soon, so have a reminder on my calendar for that. But I've really enjoyed everything that I've gotten to do so far. And I'll also be doing some one-on-one leadership coaching in February, like Jeff mentioned. So
That's awesome. Great to hear. And I'm glad you mentioned you're taking the time to reflect on the values, because a lot of us, we might know what our values are, but if I were to ask all of us sitting here, what are your top 5 values? We might not be able to spout them off, but we know what it looks like to live in alignment with them. And when we're not in alignment with them, that feels odd or sort of out of balance or not congruent, right? And so I think what you mentioned is really key, is taking that time to self-reflect, whether it's, while you're running or walking and listening to a podcast, or for some others that might be, sitting down with a journal. I'm glad you're taking advantage of coaching, because it unlocks that accountability partner to hold yourself accountable for what does it look like when you are doing your best work.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about, things are just moving so fast. There is no place in the world where things are moving faster, it feels like, than here at Michigan Ross in the first year of my MBA. But I have been a lot more intentional about carving out some small times to reflect. On my calendar, I have my weekly CEO meeting, which is me, myself, and I. And I try to take a little bit of time to just think about what went well last week, what didn't go well, and what are my priorities for this week. Sometimes that's specifically focused around interpersonal skills and being a leader. But sometimes it's just focused around me. Like, did I get enough sleep last week? Did I get in all of my workouts? And I think when you prioritize that self-reflection and being in touch with yourself, that's when you really can be a better leader, because you can bring your better self to your teams.
One of the things that sticks out to me is a lot of what we're talking about, leadership, is intangible. So it's not as easy to measure as with a spreadsheet or, a valuation tool. And Jeff, you have the MBA and MBA 2s for a very short period of time in their lives, like 2 years.
Yep.
So as they go out and they become alumni and they start progressing their careers, what do you think success looks like as we leave and go become future business leaders within either here in America or internationally? What does success look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. We talk about that a lot in terms of the kind of leader that we develop here at Ross. And we like to say, that's a leader that's collaborative, results-driven, uses that structure and is innovative, right? And so we look at those metrics. As they do that, we want to make sure that they're self-aware, right? So as they go out into the world, are they making good choices that are in alignment with their values? Are they creating impact and finding ways to create impact in ways that are aligned to who they are at their core? I think, as you mentioned, leadership is hard to measure. I think that's one of the challenges of leadership development. It's hard to measure, and there's a lot of factors that are a part of it. But, am I ready? Do I have the skill set? Am I doing it for the first time? Right? So there's a lot of things that, we're looking at when we look at future leaders and managers. But those are a lot of things that we're really excited about is can they do it? Are they willing to do it? And do they have a growth mindset about it? It's not about getting it right the first time. It's about learning from it the first time and not repeating the same mistakes. It's saying, what could I do to get 10% better, and creating a new experiment that allows you to try something new and have someone hold you accountable for whatever it is that you're learning.
Denny, what has your experience as MBA Student Council President taught you about leadership? Have there been any tough times or stories that you can share about how you've applied leadership in a difficult situation, or learned from others about leadership during your time at Ross?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 3 things that I definitely in this role have learned about leadership is just how much weight and importance I want to give towards gratitude, expressing appreciation for others in the community and also other fellow student leaders, being a huge cheerleader, right? Being present in your communities that you are a student leader of, but in service to. And I would say just communication, right? So my leadership style is, I would say I tend to err or index on the side of over-communication, but I feel that oftentimes as a leader, especially, where there's a lot going on in an environment where it's so fast-paced, it's just really important to be able to be very clear and have a regular cadence where you're communicating with people, right? So one specific experience, I would say that, I wouldn't dramatize it as a crisis, was I'm sure everyone here on the podcast today can remember that during the first week of school, all networks were down at the University of Michigan due to the, prevention for the cyber attack. And if you think about that, we're just talking about the MBAs here. There's 750 plus MBAs that are coming in for their first day of class, and you have no Wi-Fi. None of the tech was working at Ross and just at the university as a whole. And also, Slack is our main form of communication here at Ross. And, over half of the student body did not have access to Slack because the networks were down. So for me, the night before the first day of class, I went to bed thinking, this is just routine maintenance. By the morning, it's going to be fine. And I woke up the next day and I couldn't communicate with anyone. I couldn't, directly talk to anyone. So we had to go back, we had to throw out the playbook and we had to kind of be versatile there, right? So it's like working with the dean's office on my end, working with the IT tech team here at Ross. And just the moment when I was able to have communications channels that worked, sending out emails, sending out a Slack, giving people updates on the situation. How is this evolving? And I feel that a lot of people on campus, definitely, some people reached out to me and just wanted to have updates. And I said, I think that's really important to be able to let people know in moments of crisis what's going on and knowing that there's someone who's taking care of it, or at least very mindful and empathetic and in service to resolving the issue. So I would say that's a direct example. And just really just being a cheerleader, right? Kind of going to that point. So for me, it's always been really important to be present in the communities and to put people in the spotlight, regardless if they're on the MBA council or they're just students here on campus. So, for OutX, for VetX, for International X from this past week, it's always been really important to me in my leadership style to sit front and center, but as a cheerleader, as not someone who's soaking up attention. And I think putting the spotlight on others has been really, really important to make people realize and recognize just how talented they are and how much they've grown in their leadership journeys as well. So I think those are some of the key things that, immediately come to mind. And gratitude, in this day and age when everything's going so fast paced and sometimes we're just so results oriented, we want to see the numbers, we want to see the KPIs go up. But it's like behind those KPIs are human beings who are, passionate about their work or who have their own challenges and obstacles and struggles. And I think to really highlight and bring the humanity back to, high performance, I think, oftentimes we don't give enough weight to the performance or KPIs of how well people are doing through what they do.
Yeah, it's crazy that you mentioned the Wi-Fi outage in the beginning of the year. I think I blocked that out as a MBA 1 coming into such a crazy time. But yeah, and I really do remember your calm, cool, and collected messages and communications throughout that. So maybe I'll throw a little bit of gratitude back to you as someone new coming into the community. I think you definitely helped make the class feel really welcomed and safe and secure in a very
appreciate that.
Ambiguous time. So thank you for that. But I think you're right. I mean, so much of what we've talked about is empathy and empowering others, and being a cheerleader is a really great way to do that. Being present for people. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, break a leg at your chat, or, good luck, or you did great, whatever. But really being present for people is a different story. And those are the people that make me feel the most empowered as a colleague or a friend. So really can't underscore that enough.
Yeah, and I've got to say, now coming to think about it, what is it about the first day, at least for us in the class of 2024? Because the first day last year, power goes out. And then the first day this year, we're thinking,
chaos.
it can't get any worse. And internet services are down. It's just like, so when we're talking about ambiguity and we're talking about just changes and everything else and how we manage that, wow, class of 2024, we've
been through a lot.
We've been through some stuff. I kind of want to just spitball question out there. And Jeff, you mentioned this, and I would love everyone to jump in on this one. We talked about holding ourselves accountable, and Victoria, you kind of hit on this too, how you do just your weekly check-ins to hold yourself accountable to your goals. Thoughts on outside forces as helping us to maintain our accountability?
I can start us off. I mean, the weekly meeting with myself is great, but sometimes you do tell yourself what you want to hear. So I think having really tough conversations with close friends of mine who are not a part of the Ross community has been really helpful. And friends of mine who aren't necessarily in the same career track where it's just go, go, go results all the time. I feel that those outside perspectives can really help me self-reflect in an objective way. And that's a strength that I've tapped back into over the past year.
That's a good one. So I just hired my own leadership coach. As a leadership coach myself, I was like, I gotta have some accountability, and so I just hired a coach. And as I'm reflecting on it, what I really did just to make most of the experience is just say, as a result of our coaching engagement, I want to accomplish 4 things, and it was just very clear in the first meeting, and every time I do that, is these are the 4 things. After every session, I'm like, how did I make progress as it relates to each session? I call them my little A, and then I have my big A, my big agenda, and my little agenda. How am I making progress on my big A versus my little A? And so writing down those goals, holding time on the calendar, and it's really easy to have that time continue to pass when we get busy. There's things to do, but I also try to find ways, like as a coach, from an external accountability measure, but also. So with my team, one of the things that I do is to, as I come in January, new year, I'm going to say, here are the things that I'm personally doing to in alignment with ways that my values are present, but different ways that I'm going to be showing up to support myself and to support you. Here's what you can look for. And when I do that, it allows people to say, oh, wow, I have noticed that. I have noticed a change. And it allows people to be a bit more forthcoming and vulnerable with what it is that they're working on, which can be really cool. And then the final thing that I do is I keep something on my desk that's a reminder of something that I'm working on. So when I coach clients, I keep a cork on my desk, like a champagne cork. And the goal of that is to, I was told when I'm at my best, I'm like a, popped, uncorked champagne, right? Just like throw stuff against the walls. Yeah, right. See what happens, right? Just unleash, right? And so finding ways to do that, when appropriate, but just as that reminder, because it's really easy to fall into this safe coach, this safe Jeff, right? But how do I unlock and bring out, the best of me? And if I know what that is, I'm going to put that on my desk so I can look at it and say, what's my opportunity in this next conversation with the next question I ask? Or how can I have fierce accountability for those that I support? So those are just a few examples, learning lessons from the wild, if you will.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna throw out an internal and an external. So internally speaking, I think one of the things that, I'm just going to speak for myself. I always look forward to the Spotify Unwrapped at the end of each year. And what I love about it is it shows how much you've changed from year to year. I think, Victoria, doing the weekly check-ins and self-reflection is very important. But I also think that in addition to that, you want to think about it from year to year, how you've changed, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, sometimes when, on January 1st or January 2nd, because you slept in on January 1st, and to see where you are by December 31st, there has been so much that has changed, given how fast-paced everything can be, that you often don't count the wins along the way, both big and small. So I think just the larger picture of thinking about, quote unquote, your own metrics from the year, really kind of inspires you and motivates you to want to be the best version of yourself even into the next year. Externally speaking, so whenever I think about how have you improved, especially as a leader, you're a leader of people, you're not a leader of yourself, right? And I think oftentimes, the first image that comes in mind when I think of leader of self is I'm a huge fan of The Office. I've watched it way too many times. And there's an episode where Kelly Kapoor says when she's, going for a job interview and she's like, I'm a department of one, but I'm very difficult to manage. I think that's sometimes it captures a snapshot of what it means to have people really speak into your life and really kind of see the changes that you've gone through over the years as well. Both your friends, as well as people that you've worked with on group projects or have been part of workplace teams on, that sometimes you may not necessarily want to hear their feedback on you about, or that, may agree to disagree with you. I think sometimes those have actually been the most telling and most cutting for allowing me to chart my own growth as well. Even in the moments when I've heard things that in the moment, I was like, I did not want to hear that. But on further reflection have been kind of some of the biggest learnings for me. So hearing from people both that you want to hear from and maybe a little less so are huge aspects of that growth.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is very critical is, again, like Victoria said, the self-talk. But thinking about the self-awareness that Jeff mentioned earlier, it's just making sure that it's the right self-talk. Because I think sometimes we tend to be our own worst enemies as opposed to our own best friends. So it's just, having those checks and having that self-awareness to make sure that the talks we're having, it's like, be honest with yourself, but make sure on the same note, like Denny said, you're appreciating the wins. And sometimes it's like with the external, it's having the professionals. So it's great to have the friends and the family and the folks who may have the Ross experiences and who may not. But sometimes it's best to have someone who's just like has that professional spark. Like Jeff, you said you hired a professional coach to teach you leadership as the manager director of the Leadership Center, or whether it's a therapist, whoever it is. Sometimes it's great just to have someone who can have a completely unbiased opinion and approach to how to hold you accountable. So questions open for both Jeff and Denny. And this is around for not only the students who are here now, but the students who are going to come behind us. How would you recommend they best use their experience at Ross to become better leaders?
Yeah, I'm happy to start here. I would say really put yourself out there. Like, put yourself in leadership positions that you feel like you aren't qualified for yet. I think that the discomfort, especially in the context of Ross, like at the end of the day, my personal philosophy has always been like no failure is too big to have had no purpose in your life. And I think especially in the context of school, the worst possibility of, quote unquote, a failure is, a grade that wasn't as ideal as what you were hoping for, or, an event wasn't planned out to a T and it wasn't the absolute like ideal picture perfect thing that you had set out for. But I think putting yourself out there forces you to flex that leadership muscle. Like, it may not be something that you can quantify on a spreadsheet, but it is something that requires practice, right? Mm-hmm. I might be quoting this wrong, but this is super cliche. Thomas Edison found 999 ways of not how to make a light bulb, but found one way to. And the 999 ways would have never happened if he never tried and put himself out there in every single instance when failure was likely going to be the outcome. So I think at Ross, getting involved in clubs, getting involved in Sanger, getting involved in, case competitions or opportunities that present themselves that make you uncomfortable, but take you to the place of where you want to be in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years from now. I think those are some of the most quintessential aspects of being a great leader, which is facing adversity head on with a smile on your face and your chin up.
I like that a lot. And I think I resonate a lot with what you just said. And, if it's helpful to create a sort of a picture of, think about the end in mind, what's my long-term goal? What am I striving towards? And if I know what that looks like, what are the steps on the way? What are these sort of short-term goals that I reach my long-term goal? And then what are the experiences that I know I need to have to prepare me for that? So we run experiments every day. We just don't bring attention to them in ways that we should. So maybe you want to ask better questions, or maybe you want to lead more effective meetings, or maybe you want to have more focused work time, or maybe you want to have a growth mindset. All of that's possible. It's just how much time are you willing to invest in it and for your own development? And also, how much are you going to talk to people about what you're doing? So people can check back in. Hey, how did that thing go that you were working on? Do you need ideas? Can I support you? What's next for you? Everyone's sort of one-track mind, focusing on their own development, but creating a culture of collaboration and a learning environment that helps support what that looks like is really what's going to make, I think, your long-term career development and leadership development really possible.
Yeah, and I think as a friend, being that friend that checks in on people, I think back to the first week at Ross, and I have a great friend, Dylan, who I just kind of poured my heart out to about what I was hoping to get out of my Ross experience. And I'll never forget the way that he made me feel heard and supported, and the way that he continues to check in on me like week over week, month over month. And he's someone that I hope to be as a friend and a leader. And I think what Jeff said is exactly right. Just saying it out loud, telling people, and having them help you hold yourself accountable.
I love that you did that, because it reminds me of the vulnerability loop, right? That vulnerability precedes trust, right? And your ability to find someone who you could hold you accountable or just instill in a friend. Now it's this sort of perpetual cycle of, lifelong learning and, friendship to support you on your journey, whatever that looks like. That's really cool.
So I would also say, along with what Denny was saying, take opportunities to serve on leadership positions that are outside of Ross. Mm-hmm. One of the benefits of the Crisis Challenge is that you're working not only with team members from Ross, but with all the other grad programs, and you have opportunities to get experiences and just viewpoints from people outside of just our Ross community. I affectionately call Ross sometimes Cell Block D, because when we're sitting there in the winter months, in the winter garden, staring at the same folks we've been staring at for the past few days, it can be very easy to get either comfortable or to just become a little bit complacent. So taking advantage of opportunities that get you outside of that, to get you to grow and stretch yourself, I think that is one of the things, because you're going to have to do it when we're outside the building, when we graduate. So take advantage of the opportunities while you have it now. Definitely should grow and stretch yourself in other programs and other opportunities outside of just Ross.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, John. And I definitely want to plus one to that. Just like even for John and myself, or like with our summer internships, even just this past summer, believe it or not everyone else out in the world is an MBA. And I think, while it is great and all to, have these opportunities at Ross, to work with other Rossers and to hone your leadership muscle, when you go out into the workforce in any given situation, people aren't sharing the same 2-year experience that you're having here at Ross. And they may not speak the same lingo as you. They might not have the same perspectives that you've cultivated here. But you still need to be a leader of people in those contexts as well. So the more you can work with other grad students across the university, the more you're able to kind of get out of your bubble and work with, nonprofit leaders or people in different sectors, or even in industries that you might not necessarily be hoping to pivot into, but you just learn so much just from people with as diverse a perspective as you can possibly have. So I definitely want to second that as well, John.
Oh, yeah. And definitely take advantage of the M-Band, the Max, the BBAs. The folks here in Ross, they're really, really sharp. So take advantage of many different perspectives as you can.
Yep.
Yeah, Denny, earlier you were saying that you need to flex your leadership muscle. And I think that's such a good analogy, because you don't get stronger by sitting on the couch. You get stronger by getting uncomfortable, going to the gym, doing different kinds of exercises. You're not just going to do bicep curls all day, every day, and then expect to run a marathon. You have to train all the different parts of your leadership portfolio, and participating in that wide variety of experiences is a great way to do it. Making yourself uncomfortable, like I am right now on this podcast. Just doing things at Ross where you are sort of in that safety net to really flex your muscles in different ways and try new things, because it's sort of a safe space to do so.
I love that. And I mean, remember, like, no one is good at the beginning at anything, right? The first time we rode a bike or the first time we played a sport, how we got better is we had people alongside of us pushing and saying, oh, don't fall, holding us up. Or we watched back in sports, a clip of us not doing so great. Or we had a coach say, hey, remember this. Or when you're at your best when you do this. We were constantly surrounded by a network of people that were supporting and uplifting us. So we have to remember that, we're not good at the beginning, but it's that investment and that continuation of helping people help hold you accountable and being okay to ask for help and seeking the feedback, not just waiting for it when it comes. And then, as you said, though, it's reflective practice. I think that's the way to get better and to really be committed to that lifelong learning approach.
All right. So as we begin to close out, I got another popcorn question for y'all. We started out with the one word, what is leadership not? So let's go around the table and talk about in one word what leadership is. So I'll go first. I would say leadership is relationships. Like we've mentioned throughout the podcast, it's not about what your team can do for you. JFK quote, I know, but in a different form. It's not about what your team can do for you, but what you can do for your team. Like, what are you doing to motivate them? What are you doing to influence them? What are you doing to empower them? What are you doing to hold them accountable for what they do right and wrong? It's about building those relationships. It's about seeing them as not just an employee of X firm. It's seeing them as spouses. It's seeing them as, partners. It's seeing them as parents. It's seeing them holistically for who they are, appreciating them holistically for who they are, and helping them become better as they grow and adapt and experiment throughout their time and journeys.
I'm happy to go next. Mine's, so if I can't use the word, relational, I'll use the word collaborative, right? Because I really do believe that, in order to get something done, you have to bring other people alongside with you. And that might be one person, that might be a group of people, but, find who needs to be in the room at the right time, and to be thoughtful about what is it we're accomplishing and what role are people playing to help move that forward. But I strongly believe in the value and the power of relationships as it relates to getting something done. And so my word would be collaborative.
I think my word, which has been used throughout the podcast, so I might be cheating here, would be empowerment. I think, throughout this particular episode and just even in, what I see as a central tenet of leadership is not putting the spotlight on you as the leader in an arbitrary title that was bestowed on you, but putting the spotlight on your team members and putting that spotlight on people that are also growing in their leadership journey, right? Like at the end of the day, you won't be remembered for making the best event in the world. You will be remembered for the ways that you have made people feel and have allowed people to grow. Like there is no quote unquote perfect leader, right? There are amazing leaders. There are, timeless leaders, but leadership is inherently a dynamic process with no end in sight. Like you are always growing. And so empowerment of people around you and, in your collaboration or even just in thinking about the opportunities that you've given to other people to shine and to show, their strengths and their worth, that is the most rewarding thing at the end of the day. And that's what leaders should be meant to do in 2023 and also in, 2055 and beyond. So that's what I would say.
You actually stole my word. I was also going to say empowerment, but I'll pivot a little bit and I'll say empathy. I think using empathy to empower others, putting yourself in the shoes of another person, of the team as a whole, and digging deep within yourself to bring to the table whatever it is that team needs or that individual needs. Well, thank you so much, Jeff and Denny, for being here with us today. I feel like this was a really great way for me to reflect, even in this moment, on my leadership journey here at Ross. And it's been great to have both of you as role models in that process.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Business Beyond Usual is brought to you by the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Today's episode was produced by John Brown and myself, Victoria Rednicki. Executive producers of BBU are JT Godfrey, David Amarim, and John Brown, and Arpit Sharma. Special thanks to Jonah Brockman, who did all of our editing today. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, go blue, and this is Business Beyond Usual.